Hey, all right, everybody, what's up? Doug Brown here, Method Airwaves, episode 6, Dream Big. Wow, here we are. Where to begin today? Well, Dream Big, it's a program that I do. Nationally, I speak at schools, libraries, detention centers, and everywhere in between. I've done this for many, many years in my skate career. We'll get into all that in a minute. But why Dream Big? Well, it's not the most exciting title in the world. It's not the most original, but it says a lot. And it's what we're going to cover today. I'm going to talk about optimism, hope, character development, believing in yourself, putting your dreams into action. Now, all this stuff sounds kind of Tony Robbins or Dr. Phil. I'm not really like that. When I talk about this stuff, I'm not going to be too contrived with it all. I try to talk from my experiences, my life, and my brain, and most of all, my heart. I put my heart into this stuff. I'm not an expert. I don't pretend to be an expert. I'm not going to point fingers and, like I said, be Dr. Phil-ish, because that's not who I am. I just try to help people. I try to inspire and make a difference in people's lives. I look at my parents and my mentors and my role models and what they've done for me. And if I can do that for somebody else, mission accomplished. That's what this is all about. So there's so many topics to talk about today. Most of all, we got to start inward. I say this to people all over the place. No matter who I run into or I speak to, I say, don't let anybody take your dreams away, no matter what they are. Every single one of us has a dream. There's something we want to do or we hope to be. You got to look inward. I'm living proof of this, because at my age and everything I've been through, I know I sound like Yoda or something, but once you get over 40, man, and things start happening and you look back at your timeline of life, your memories start carrying weight. They start meaning more. And I've been through adversity. I've made it out the other end. So I can speak about this stuff. Adversity makes strong people. I've said this probably in every single podcast I've done. What that means is we're all going to go through tough times, every single one of us, and we can't let those tough times define us. So, starting from such a nucleus of the idea of living in the moment, I think of a time period, one of my earliest memories I can really ever remember. I was probably 2.5, 3, early 3, let's say. My family was going on vacation. It was the early 1970s, and we were going to Put-in-Bay. And I do remember this very vaguely, but I have a really strong memory of it coming up in a minute. So we go to this vacation, family vacation, my dad, my mom. My dad was a successful gynecologist at the time. My brother was 2 years older than me. So if I was 3, he was 5 or so. And we went to Put-in-Bay. And we went swimming. It was just my dad, my brother, and myself. My mom was somewhere else doing something in the hotel room or something. But the memory I have of swimming, I will never forget this. It's just ingrained in my brain. My brother was swimming somewhat towards the deep end. My father, he was reading the newspaper in his chair right by the pool. And then there was me in the shallow end, floating like a bobber. I had my rubber inner tube wrapped around my waist. And this was before the days of the floaties. You know, they have the new high-tech floating devices, I guess, that kids wrap around their arms. But back then, it was just this inner tube, real small. And I'm floating about, and I keep going further and further into the deep end at this point. My brother was distracted in his corner, and my dad was reading his newspaper. Well, needless to say, somehow I had lifted my arms up, what have you, but the little me slipped through the inner tube and shot down into the water in the deep end. And I really do. I remember this so vividly. It's eerie to think about now. But I couldn't swim at the time. And it was a moment of panic. My brother didn't even notice. My dad just happened to have his newspaper and thought it was kind of quiet, flipped down the newspaper, extended his neck, and saw that I was not there. So, puts on his Superman cape, jumps in the pool and saves my life. I remember being rescued, brought up, coughing, and I lived. But just a really vivid memory that was so long ago that stuck with me. Now, why am I telling you this tale? It was an example early on, really early on, that life can be taken away at any time. And life is so precious. It's vital that we embrace every moment, no matter what it is, to embrace our emotions, especially if they're happy ones. The good outweighs the bad, the optimism. You're going to hear a lot of repetitiveness in this today. Live in the moment, and that's a good example of that. There's a plethora of memories I could share in my life that are examples of this. But it's not all about me. It's about you folks. I want you to dive inward. It's a time period to really think about yourself, your life, where you're at right now in this moment. Are you happy? If not, how can you make yourself happy? What can you do? Because optimism is the only solution for any of this. You really have to have optimism and hope. So living in the moment, it frees you from who you might have been in the past or who you might become in the future. You do have control of your direction, but you can only control that, really, living in the here and now. It's what truly counts. It's those baby steps in reaching and achieving a goal. It's being in that single step that's taking you to where you want to be. In life, yeah, there can be a destination, but really it's the journey that counts. Let's explore, dream big. Such a simple saying, but it means a lot. There's a couple Howard Jones songs that come to mind. Howard Jones was an artist from the 1980s that I was a big fan of. I've met many times. He subscribes to hope and optimism without a doubt. All his music seems to go in that direction. But there's two songs that come to mind that are appropriate for today. The first is Things Can Only Get Better. That was a big hit for him back in the day. That song, every lyric is so fitting of everything we're talking about. And the other song is Dream Into Action, which, right on, dream into action. Boy, that says it right there. That sums it up. We all have that dream. We all have that idea, that change we want to make, something we want to acquire, something we want to do, somewhere we want to go, whatever the dream may be. You got to take that first step. That is number one. I can't tell you how many emails I've received that are, oh, I have a book I want to do. I want to be a writer. How do you get published? And they go on and on. Since I've written 7 books now. I remember when it was just 1. But being a writer, how did it happen? I mean, I vividly remember thinking, wow, that seems impossible to write a book, to get published. I'd go to a bookstore, look at a book, say, well, how did that person get from A to B to C to D? You know what I did? The step that I took was I grabbed a pen or a pencil, went to a piece of paper, and I started writing. Or you can jump on your keyboard, you can start typing into Notepad or something. My point is, you have to take that first step. It can be extremely simple and minute, but that's what you have to do. So that's the advice I always give people when they go, oh, I want to write a book, I want to get published, I have this story, just talk. I say, you know what? Write the thing. Finish the book. Don't go into your dream just solely thinking about that destination only. You know, when I dreamed of having a book, I wasn't just thinking, okay, done on the shelf. I had to take baby steps. I had to write the thing. And then I got excited and said, well, let's try to get this published and see what we can do with it. And it wasn't easy. I could spend a lot of time telling you about publishing and writing and that whole world, but it happened. And I was very, very fortunate. I got a book deal on my first book, and that led to my second book, and so on and so on. But I've experienced it. I went through that. Patience, which honestly, I don't have a lot of patience, so it wasn't really easy for me. That's a good example, though, of kind of putting a dream into action. That one for sure, being an author. And what's happened in my life with my experiences, which go way back with dreaming, is that one door opens and that can take you somewhere else. Maybe you'll go on a different path. It'll take you somewhere else because of that very initial start in trying to get to that goal, that dream. And another example of making your dreams come true or putting your dreams into action. You might not always get that exact dream, but it can take you a lot of different directions, and you might surprise yourself and find the same thing in something else. But a good example of that for me was when I was in high school. I was in bands, and I just saw myself on tour with Guns N' Roses or Metallica or AC/DC. I was thinking that big. I was dreaming that big. And I mean, my dream to do that went even further back into grade school, and it's a whole story about that in episode 1 solo of my podcast. And I was a childhood actor, making a long story short. So my dreaming started really early on thinking outside the box. But in high school is when things really started to get into focus, and I really wanted to be in a big national act, a band, to get a record deal. I mean, I was studying the Beatles at the time, and I was also in a band, and we were playing out, and that was the dream. So after I graduated high school, so much happened from there to there, but I ended up teaching guitar at a music studio. There's Music Center. I had my own studio, and it was a pretty prestigious job jumping right out of high school, I must say. But I was very fortunate, and I did that. I ended up doing that job for 10 years. Now, what I'm getting to is, okay, I wasn't on tour with Guns N' Roses. I wasn't opening for Metallica or what have you. But you know what? I was sitting in a chair. I was going to work with my hands on that guitar. I had a music job. Now, how dare at that time I say, well, my dream didn't come true. I didn't make it or whatever. I was getting paid to have my hands on the guitar. And not only that, I was teaching. I was being a mentor. So, even back then in my early 20s, I had achieved a dream kind of without knowing it. And that's what I mean in life. You can think big, you can go as big as you want, but your dream might change. It might take you to a different avenue. You might surprise yourself. And this is a good thing. This can be a good thing. Your dream can change. But as long as you keep moving forward and you recognize where you're going, what you're doing. And my skating career is like that too. I mean, the guitar teaching, did that for 10 years. I turned pro in 2002. Again, making a long story short. And I've been doing that for, almost 18 years now. But a lot of doors have opened because of that. I became a motivational speaker. I became a published author. So these credits start building, but when I rewind, I look back, it all started in my childhood even. The idea of dreaming big, thinking outside the box. So it's never too late. Start now if you haven't yet. Start today, no matter what it is. Excuses can build. You can't do this because of that. You might not have enough money. You don't have resources. There's always a way. You got to tell yourself that. You have to say, no matter what the obstacle is, you can conquer it. Anything is possible. It's the only way to really push forward and to make something happen. And also, easier said than done, right? I mean, you could say, I want to put myself on the moon. I want to be on the moon in 5 years. Seems impossible, right? Well, let's see. What can you do to get there? If you don't get there, you can go to school. From school, you can work for NASA. And I mean, these things count. Do you see where I'm going with all this? Go for the goal. See where it takes you in the meantime. Because that journey is very important. Maybe more important than the actual destination, because you're going to learn a lot about yourself during that journey. The journey of life. The journey of trying to find something or to achieve something. Now the obstacles. You're going to have obstacles. That is life right there. Speed bumps are always there. It's like a wedding. If you're planning a wedding, you might as well assume that something's going to go wrong. The DJ is going to be bad. The dress might tear. Somebody might get in a fight. Something might happen. That's life. Think of it like that. On this dream, on this journey, you might run out of money. You might not have a car. You might this or that, this or that. No matter what it is, you got to make it through those hard times. That is so important. In my skate career, I've done this for a while. It's been wild. I've had sponsors. I've lost sponsors. I've won some competitions. I lost some. I've had a lot of crazy stuff happen. But I'm glad I stuck with it. Because the outcome is contentment, and I've made a living. And I've reached a lot of people. I think that's the main payment in why I do what I do, without a doubt. So on a side note with that, I hope whatever your dream is, that you're not chasing money or fame or something that doesn't have a lot of substance. I like to encourage people to do something, to go for something that can make a difference in the world, to change and inspire folks. I look at my parents. Dad was a doctor. My mom was a nurse. Even my brother became a doctor. And then, of course, there was me when I graduated high school, the black sheep, the family rebel. But I was surrounded, fortunately, with some people that were doing some pretty positive stuff. I learned that from my parents without a doubt, that their job didn't define them. It was more than what they were doing. They were really making a difference in the community. And not all dreams are easy to acquire, without a doubt. Nothing is just handed to us. I like to think of my father first and foremost with his job. He didn't come from money at all. Everything that he achieved, he did on his own. And my mom, much the same way. When I think of my father and all the years with college and medical school and internships and all the stuff he went through to land in his position to be able to provide for my brother and I mean, it's commendable without a doubt. So I've always admired and respected his journey, because he didn't come from money at all, and he achieved a lot. He really did. And his goal had ultimately ended up really reaching a lot of people. I mean, to this day, I've said it before, people come up to me and tell me stories of him and how much they liked him, and what an impact he made rather, on their lives. And there's something to be said about that. So that's inspirational. And in my own personal journey, everything I've ever achieved, I did on my own, 110%. Right out of the gate in high school. I mean, every penny I had made from the skate shop I had in high school, which is a separate story, separate podcast, episode 1, solo. Check that out. And I made a lot of good choices, and I saved my money. When I was making good money in high school with that skate shop, I put every penny in the bank. I really did. The only thing I bought were maybe CDs and just frivolous things like that. But out of high school, I mean, my dad, he just said, hey, you have to be out of the house by this date. And there was some friction. It wasn't easy. I wasn't one to just be like, okay, easy peasy. No, it was a struggle, but I'm glad he did that. Because I was out, man. I was out on my own. I was fortunate that I had a savings account. I did what I had to do to make things happen. I didn't receive a penny from my father. I had to make it happen on my own from the ground up. And I didn't go to college. If I could go on a time machine, I would have. I highly, highly recommend school. That's a great resource. I mean, talk about achieving a dream. There's so many resources now with online schooling and colleges. You can get a lot done that route. And some dreams require that. To be a physician or something, or a lawyer, or a veterinarian. I mean, there's schooling involved. That has to be noted and respected, and something to keep on the radar. But for me, I was such a dreamer. I mean, I had my ducks in a row a bit. I had the guitar teaching job. I mean, I had my skill of guitar. I was able to teach. And being in a rock band, those type of things. I mean, those were all leap of faith type careers and goals and dreams that I had at that time. So my dad kicks me out of the house, and I had to find a small home, and that didn't happen overnight by any means. I got a storage shed. I put all my stuff in there, and I struggled in the beginning. It was difficult. But again, I did it all on my own. And then, after teaching guitar for a considerable amount of years, I, by a fluke, fell into the whole skateboard world and that whole thing, which is a long story in itself. But I did. I became the professional skateboarder. Definitely not overnight. I thought that whole adventure would last a year or two. I was getting salary through these companies and paying my bills. And I was hustling. I was doing trade shows. I was flying around the United States. I was competing. I was getting involved. I was really, really just holding on to it. And I went through a lot to be where I am today. There's no question about that. There had been a lot of times where I didn't have any money and I was suffering. The sponsors weren't paying a lot, and I'm so glad I made it through some of the hardships and storms in my career, because it all landed here. And I've had my roadblocks. I've had times in my career where I thought, wow, is this what this is all about? Is this, where I've had haters. I've had people that have tried to kind of stop me, that have brought me down and kind of questioned my focus on what I was doing. And I'm so glad I ignored all that and stayed true to my purpose, which definitely wasn't to give in to any of that. A good example of that is a few years back, after my first book came out, I had a lady come up to me at an event, and she had this look in her face, and I was curious. And she said her son was suicidal. He was 14, he was short for his age, and he was being bullied severely, to the point of contemplating suicide. But he had read my book. And from that, he did a 180 and turned his life around. Wow. There's a paycheck. And that sunk deep. I'll never forget that story. And it also made me think, if I didn't write that book, or if I gave up on my skateboarding career early on, when I had tough times, people trying to bring me down, I never would have reached that young man. And I stop and think about that and think, wow, that's what it's all about. Wow. And I have a lot of stories like this. I really do. And that has inspired me to keep moving forward. Always move forward. That dream continues. So yes, there'll be a negative force once in a while trying to stop you from that dream. And you have to keep your antenna up for that kind of stuff and expect it. Things that will take away that dream that can be avoided are things like drugs and alcohol. Going down that path. I mean, talk to any recovering drug addict. The wasted time. That can take away your dream. Drugs and alcohol, negative things, surrounding yourself with negative people, making bad choices. That's all wasted time. You don't want to invest any time in something like that because it will. It'll take away your friends, your family, and definitely your dream. And you have to prioritize as well. You have to ask yourself a lot of questions when you're going through life and pursuing a dream. You might have some unexpected things, some of those speed bumps I was talking about earlier. If you're a young person, maybe you get pregnant, and then all of a sudden your dream shifts. If that happens, that doesn't mean your dream can't come true. It'll just change it. You'll just have to, it'll be much harder to pursue. But darn it, it's still doable. Anything is possible. You have to tell yourself that. Using the word can't isn't healthy in pursuing a dream. You hear that a lot if you talk to somebody who's full of excuses when it comes to going after something. Well, I can't do it because of this. I can't, this can't. Enough with the can't stuff. Do. You gotta do. Again, easier said than done, right? None of this is easy. But strength, courage, inner strength. Go deep. Listen to yourself. Put your brain into it. Put your heart into it. Those are two important elements. No matter what. Your brain and your heart. You put the two of those together, anything is possible. Out of all the books I've written, my second book, which is titled Looking Glass Self, Hope, Optimism, and the Journey Within, that one is the most self-help-ish book I have. And I always tell people, when they ask about this particular book, I say, hey, look, again, I'm not some expert. I don't have all the answers, but I figured out a few things that really work for me in my life. And to the point where I wrote the book, but I have to go back into it once in a while and take my own advice, for sure. Now, with this book, I've had a lot of interesting feedback through the years. Oddly enough, men seem to like this book the most. That's been interesting for me. My brother had told me of all my books, this was the one that really reached him the most. It's not a big, thick book. It's just kind of self-helpy, some advice here and there. And it has a lot of my original quotes that I came up with, and some definition of some terms, some simple terms, but ones that are worth repeating. And speaking of that book, there's a chapter in here that I'm going to read instead of memorizing the whole thing. It's just simply called Hope, Optimism, and Purpose. And I'm going to read from that, and because I think there's some weight to some of this stuff, and I don't want to mess it up. So here we go. We are first mind, body, and soul, a triangle of components we embody. What we do with those three components involve hope, optimism, and purpose. No matter what your faith or what you believe, how each of us understands the meaning of life comes down to the question, why are we here? The human longing is for meaning. We all have different ideas of human existence, on our purpose, our identity, our philosophies on life. We are emotional and intellectual beings. We serve a purpose. We have complete control of that purpose. You are behind the steering wheel of your life. Both hands are on that wheel. You determine the speed and control to your destination depending on your sense of direction and vision. The obstacles in that road might take you off course or down an unexpected detour. However, with optimism as your fuel, the journey will go much smoother. The road is a common metaphor for the journey of life. It's a good one. Even those that have been through traumatic events can still subscribe to optimism. The man who gets in the car crash and meets his wife at a rehabilitation center as a result ends up having children with her and becomes an author sharing his life story to reach others. He will tell you he is thankful that he went through those events because it landed him in that position. We find ourselves because of the detours in our life. Peace and contentment can only be found in positive actions and in a positive state of mind. Hope and optimism come solely from within. A person dying from a terminal illness can still have more hope and optimism than the grumpy lady at the grocery store. We must nurture our triangle components of mind, body, and soul. Feeding our mind with literature and education. The brain is fiercely powerful. Taking care of our bodies with exercise and respect. Feeding our soul with finding our sense of self and being in tune with our emotions. When taking a break from writing, I open the blinds, allowing the sun to flood the room. Let the sunshine in your life. My mother always taught me the importance of allowing a room to have light. The same goes for our lives. I reflect a lot, but not so much that I'm stuck there. Moving forward has always been part of who I am. Tomorrow brings a new day. So that's a small part of that chapter. And we're going to go ahead and I'm going to move forward a little bit further down the line towards the end of the book to a part that I think is fitting for today's topic. So here we go. Think about your own life, your own direction, your triangle of components, the mind, body, and soul. Are you in search of your purpose? Are you where you want to be in life? By looking inward and getting to know the authentic you will be able to reach outwardly to contribute to the world with positivity and conscience. I ask you to step back from your life for a moment. Take your surroundings in. Have a moment of awe and wonder. You are immersed in that moment. Today, you can take that first step to find your voice. We are each a voice in the choir that is life. Our voices are all different. We sing different songs, songs of positive purpose, uniquely in tune, creating a divine, harmonious melody. So there's a small sample of that book. I try not to get too preachy and motivational speaker-ish, when I speak to groups, I don't have a PowerPoint presentation with pie graphs and things to put your audience absolutely to sleep. I'm not a fan of that. I try to talk from the heart, and I try to write from the heart, because that's the best way, is honesty, is to reach people. These aren't topics to really tiptoe. You have to be blunt and kind of to the point and to be real, because chasing a dream isn't easy. There's no question about it. I've said it probably 10 times in this podcast. Now, there's a bunch of quotes that I put in this book that I kind of came up with through the time. I could be driving or working out, or I could be in the shower. where I come up with these ideas and then I grab a pen or pencil and I write on a scrap of paper these things down. And here's a small selection of those that I'd like to share with you. First one is, we should always learn from our experiences, the good and the bad. It's how we grow as people. And here's another one. A mentor's voice can be reborn and reused within the admirer at hand. And your eyes should be open to dream, becoming reality. There is magic in motion. There is energy in change. There is something in all of us to make a difference in any way, every day. And a few more. A hater will always downplay your success, only to feed their own insecurity and jealousy. If one hates everyone, this includes themselves. Therein lies the problem. Education, intelligence, and compassion eliminates ignorance. To hate one's differences is rooted in insecurity and selfishness. To be accepting of it is rooted in love and selflessness. An empathetic, open mind is a sign of maturity and acceptance. One that judges those in the spotlight often hides behind the curtain of no courage. The natural high eliminates the natural low. The artificial high becomes the natural low. And let's see, one more here. Art is everything. Life is art. Movement is art. An expression, noises, and views. Art should not be just viewed as just a painting on a wall. Life is art, and art is life. And there's some quotes. They're much harder to read out loud than to read silently or when I wrote it. They're almost like little fortune cookies, aren't they? That's what they remind me of, reading them out loud. Anyways, so, dreaming into action. Let's get this going, folks. Now, once you have that dream, you have to ask yourself kind of what's next. There's always that. It's never really a done deal because your dream, hopefully, you land it and it leads to other things. I've been really fortunate in this department because never in a million years when I got into my skateboard arena here did I think it would lead to being a motivational speaker or the author. I never thought that, but I really went inward and I've taken my skills or talents and added them to this arena. And you can do the same thing no matter what it is. You really have to ask yourself, what are you good at? What are you attracted to? Can you picture yourself doing this activity? And be educated. It doesn't always mean you have to go to college to do something. I mean, if you wanted to be a stand-up comedian, what would you do? You'd go out and you'd listen to a lot of stand-up comedians. You would rent CDs, rent DVDs, buy books, biography on George Carlin or whoever, and maybe even go to some comedy clubs, get to know some of the comedians personally. And with today's resources like Facebook, social media, you can really connect with people and have conversations and ask advice. That's very important. And that's just an example. Comedian, no matter what it is, find somebody that's doing what you want to do. Ask advice. That's very important. Don't be afraid to ask people. Ask advice. You learn from that. We need educators and mentors. Reach out to those resources. Yes, in pursuing a dream, luck can be an element, without a doubt. You're in the right place. You're in the right time. The lightning bolt hit you just at that time. But at the same time, if you have your ducks in a row, so to speak, that can help considerably. Meaning, you can create your own luck. If you have everything ready in place, over time, you earned your stripes, you bled for it, you had patience, then it can pay off. So that's creating your own luck. I saw an interview not so long ago with Steven Spielberg, and he said people ask him all the time, how do you make movies? What do? I want to do this. What's the magic step? And he replied, you just make movies. That's it. Think about that. You don't have to have $1 billion budget, $1 million camera to do it. It's not about that. You just need a camera, some subjects, and make your film. In other words, if you're going to be a lumberjack, go to the forest. And that's great advice, and I give that to you. Whatever you're pursuing, do it, and do it often. Nothing beats experience. That's how you get better at something. In closing, I'll say it again. Don't let anybody take away your dream. People will say you can't do this, you can't do that. Don't let those obstacles stop you. And if you've seen the movie Rocky, I love this quote. Life, it's not about how hard you can hit. It's how hard you can get hit and get back up again. So with all this, we covered a lot. I hope some of it has entered your veins and you're feeling pumped up to go out there and conquer the world and achieve your dreams, no matter what it takes. I talk a lot about all this stuff in my books, which you can check out at www.dougbrown.org. And in closing for today, I'll quote the great Ferris Bueller. And he said, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you might miss it. So everybody, think about that. Until next time, Doug Brown here, signing off for Method Airwaves. We'll see you later. Dream big.